You know, we hear a lot of talk about setting goals, and rightly so. We should have goals. We don't get where we want to go unless we lay out a plan to get there. My guest today says a common business mistake people make is thinking they should start here and then set out a plan to get there. She says, instead, we should start with the end in mind and then backtrack to figure out how to get there. We've got details coming up with Stephanie Melish on today's One Simple Thing podcast.
It's time to build a better business
by building a better you.
This is One Simple Thing.
Welcome back to the show. It's Dave Kirby with you as we once again welcome Stephanie Melish onto the show. She's an author, a CEO, a speaker, a certified business coach, and she has written a book called Bank Your Mistakes: How to Convert 10 Common Business Practices into Bigger Profits Instantly. If you'd like to get your copy of the book, I saw a few of you clicked on the link yesterday. Would love for you to as well. Just go to our website. There's a banner ad on the right side of the page at onesimplethingonline.com. I love Stephanie's book because it just basically lays out the mistake, right? Why you're making the mistake and what you can do about it. I mean, there's a little more to it than that, but it's a very simple process to lead you from where you are now to where you want to be. And one of the chapters in the book is what we're talking about today, and that's setting the wrong goals. So let's get into it. Stephanie, welcome to the One Simple Thing podcast.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
Yeah, I'm having a good time as well. We're talking about your book, Bank Your Mistakes: How to Convert 10 Common Business Practices into Bigger Profits Instantly. And these, we talked on the last episode, many of these are hard-won skills and strategies that you've learned by making these mistakes yourself. How long have you been in business for yourself as an entrepreneur?
It's been a little over 3 years now.
And I'm assuming all of these things are things that just kind of popped up as you, because there's no guide, right? There's no manual to be an entrepreneur. It's like being a parent, right? There's no manual. It's just a matter of trial and error in some cases.
It is. You know, although I'd like to think that my new book helps out just a little bit with that, but no, there's no manual that I received when I went and registered my company with the state of North Carolina. They didn't, and if they did, I totally missed it. It must have went into my junk folder.
Nope, I didn't get my parenting manual either, and you know, the mistakes can cause us problems in the future, but it's I like a saying: you either win or you're wiser, right? So a win's a win, and even a failure, if it makes me wiser, is still a win. And that's, I think, what you're talking about here with banking your mistakes, right? Is to get wiser, and maybe we can learn from your mistakes through your book, so that we don't have to make the same ones.
That's the hope. Yeah, if I can help one person just transition and any of these, convert these mistakes and realize that there's better ways to be doing things, it's a success marker in my book.
So the first mistake that you list out in your book is setting the wrong goals, right? So we all hear about goal setting, but all goals are not equal.
They're not. And setting the wrong goals can lead you to the wrong place. And that's definitely not what you want when you're trying to run your own business and trying to define success, however you define it. I believe success is a very flexible word. Everybody has different definitions of it. My version may be slightly different than yours, especially because we're on different parts of our journey. And it's the same with goals. You know, you're at different parts in your journey, but it's figuring out, are you setting the right goals? And a lot of times you're not, because they're focused on what you're doing, and you're missing out on the real big picture there. So if you're trying to set your goals just on something that you're wanting to accomplish in the near future, even if you do your stretch goals, your 5-10-year goals, it's not how I do things. I start with the end and work backwards.
Well, we'll get into that in a second, but you're exactly right. I remember when I was a kid in Cub Scouts, we were learning about compasses, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like if you get off by 1 degree on your compass and then go, say a mile on that wrong heading, you'll be a mile off of where you wanted to end up, right? So it's these little shifts away from, we turn our eyes a little bit one way or the other, and we can end up in a totally different place than what we intended. So it's really important to know what we're looking at and keep our eyes on that, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so you talk about starting with the end. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for me, the end is your legacy. What legacy are you going to be leaving, or do you want to leave when you're done? Whether that means retiring or when we move on from this earth. But what is legacy? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want them to think about you? How do you want to be remembered? And taking that legacy question. So often, I work with coaching clients as a certified business coach, and they just they don't even know how to start to answer that question. They've never thought of it in those terms. They've never thought about, what do I want my legacy to be? And if you don't have the answer to that question, all these goals that you're setting, they're not the right goals. They're just small little markers in your life that don't add up to anything. When you start looking at legacy with the big picture, then your goals that you're setting become the right goals because they're leading you down that path. Everything's going in the right direction. If you want to use your compass there, you're going to the place where you have predetermined you want to be.
Yeah, we talked on the last episode about scoreboards, and we all have to have one, and sometimes it's money or whatever you define success as. But ultimately, this is the ultimate scoreboard, isn't it? What my legacy is going to look like. Because
I like to think so.
the money or whatever else, that's that's nice, and it's definitely a scoreboard. But if at the end of my life I don't end up being who I wanted to have been, or if people end up viewing my legacy in a way that was not what I would have intended, then the amount of money or whatever the yacht or whatever else I was able to achieve doesn't really have the same impact, does it?
Exactly. My dad tells me quite often, money is great and everything, but you can't take it with you once you're gone. So what are you leaving behind? You can leave behind money, sure, but it's not the same as the memories, what impact you have on other human beings' lives, the people that you're connected with, and the random strangers that you may have done a kind act for that you never know the actual true volume of it. So understanding what's that legacy going to be.
So I guess, and that's probably not something we just sit down, in a 10-minute session and go, okay, what's my legacy? It's something we've got to put some work into maybe and think about and just kind of mull around and make sure that we, I don't think most of us probably haven't asked that question of ourselves. We just kind of stab in the dark and hopefully hit it, right?
You're right. And so really asking yourself, how do I want to be remembered? What do I want people to say about me? And that's it. Typically what I find with most legacies is that the vision that you have for your life or the legacy you're wanting to leave boils down to certain characteristics, things that you want to be known for, whether it's a kind human being, giving, charitable. There are things that you want the world to know about you, and it's thinking in those terms instead of the short terms. When you can pull yourself away from the smaller goals in life, whether it's achieving a certain sales number, and you can look more big picture, you find your drive and motivation to be completely different.
So we start with that end goal, and that is our legacy. How do we move backward from there and make sure our shorter term goals are feeding into that?
Right. So whatever that legacy happens to be that you're trying to build, it's figuring out, well, what's the steps that need to lead up to? I call them milestones. What are the milestones? What's one step backwards? What needs to happen in order for that to happen? And then you keep going backwards. And this starts to break down into, when you think about your legacy, there's probably like a few major milestones that need to happen in order for that to be hit. If I'm wanting to be a fantastic mother to my children. Considering I only have a dog right now, I probably, one of my milestones would be to actually have the children. So, you can go with the surface level. You figure out the prominent moves that need to happen. But then what are the other things that you want to do along that journey to make sure? So whether that's education, it's figuring out, reflecting on the things that my mom did well with me that I admire. What are those things that I want to reciprocate? But when you're talking about goal setting, and you lead from the end goal, whatever that happens to be, so you can look at anything. And if we want to go more simple for a business owner and really break it down, if your goal next year is to increase your sales by a certain percentage, then it's starting with that number and breaking down, well, what needs to happen right before that in order to hit that goal. And you keep asking yourself that question until you get to daily small action steps, bite-sized nuggets that you need to take every day to hit that. So if you want to look big picture legacy, if I want to be known as a kind human being, well, then I need to do acts of kindness every single day. It makes sense. Now I'm leading in that direction. If I want to increase my sales by a certain percentage, I'm going to break down my number and find out, okay, well, what would be my monthly goals? And if my monthly goal is that, well, how do I know how much money to generate? What are the activities that need to happen in order for me to hit that goal that month? And then making sure that you're adjusting along the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So where do we start? Do you want us to, I think I probably know the answer to this, but you want us to sit down and just kind of think about that legacy? Would that be a good place to start today?
Yeah, I think you sit down, you think about your legacy, and then you figure out, so often I come across people who they're wanting to have this big, huge, successful business, but then it's not connected to anything else. So understanding the why, what motivates you, and I think just identifying legacy is a good way to really, in a nutshell, understand your why, your purpose, your being. What are you striving for? And then you can start to go to the subset of goals, which are more business focused or personally focused, and break them down into the backwards format.
I was just thinking as you were talking there, we all see celebrities or athletes or whoever, and they do stupid stuff, right? And you're like, they've got all the money in the world. Why are they unhappy? And maybe it's because even though they've achieved that scoreboard of money, maybe it's not congruent with who they really want to be as a person.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely celebrities out there that, oh man, we can get into a whole long dialogue about that. But you think again, societal pressures of trying to put you into a certain bubble or a certain format, and you end up at the end of the day maybe going down a really long path that you never even thought you would. And while outsiders look at your success and go, wow, if I could only do that, look at what you've accomplished. The internal turmoil, which is what I think you're talking about, because they're not aligned with their legacy, is what drives them to be unhappy.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter how much success, however you define it, if it doesn't line up with who you really want to be, that's an empty place to end up. So we're going to start with that end in mind, as Ken Blanchard said, right? And we're going to sit down and think about our legacy today. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Really enjoying this and really learning a lot.
Thank you.
Once again, that's Stephanie Melish here on the One Simple Thing podcast. If you'd like to pick up her book, it's called Bank Your Mistakes, How to Convert 10 Common Business Practices into Bigger Profits Instantly. There's a banner ad on the right side of the page when you go to OneSimpleThingOnline.com. Or you go to the top of today's show notes. That's episode 577. And again, you'll find the show notes at OneSimpleThingOnline.com. While you're there, click on Support the Show. You'll find that in the main menu. It'll take you to links where you can share our program on Facebook and Twitter. And you can also leave us a rating and review on iTunes. Those are the lifeblood of any podcast. And we'd sure appreciate you helping us get the word out by leaving us a rating and review. Again, you'll find the links when you click on Support the Show at OneSimpleThingOnline.com. Thanks for listening today. Stephanie Melish going to come back on the next episode again. We'll talk more about those mistakes that we commonly make as business people and what we can do about them. I'm Dave Kirby. Thanks for listening to the One Simple Thing podcast.